Thank you so much for having us in the studio.
My pleasure.
This studio is an amazing thing to preserve. It has such a rich history to it, both your dad's work as well as so much about Claremont and Pomona, wrapped in here. When did you first move into this house?
They built the house in 55.
55,
We
okay.
moved in September of 55, and they had lived in a little bungalowy place over at the colleges for the previous maybe 4 years.
Okay, and then they bought this house.
They built it actually. They came to Claremont because he was going to use the GI Bill for school.
Mm-hmm.
And then his dad lent him the money because the GI guys, the feds wouldn't give him a GI loan on this house because it was too weird. Like the windows were all facing this way and not on the street.
Really interesting.
So his dad, who was a doctor, had some money, and I think it was $18,000.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's not
Wow.
wrong. It sounds so surreal.
I know it does sound surreal, but 55
Yeah.
after the war.
And he had made friends with Fred McDowell, who was the architect of this house.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how they got to know each other, but they stayed very good friends for a long time.
Oh, beautiful. So Fred designed this house
Yeah.
and built, and you guys moved in when it was brand new?
It was brand new, and this backyard was, this whole neighborhood was orange groves, basically.
Right, yeah, back in that time. Did your dad ever talk about what made him move to Southern California after the war?
He went back to Chicago, which is where he grew up, where his parents were.
Uh-huh.
And I think my grandfather, who had served in the war in a medical capacity, had decided he wanted to move to California. So my dad's mom and dad bought a place in Redlands.
Really? Okay.
And my grandfather worked he was the head pathologist of the Redlands Hospital, whatever the main hospital was. And my dad would live with them while he went to college, and that's where he met my mom at college.
Okay.
But they didn't stay too long there, maybe 5 years, and then my grandparents moved to Santa Barbara, so that was where they lived always. So they lived in Redlands, my dad lived in Redlands, he and my mom met, and then they moved to Claremont, having to do with how he had started painting.
Really?
Well,
more so than just for a teaching position, but
no, he got out of the war, he came here, he waited till my mom graduated, she was a year behind him, and then they were going to go to graduate school in Colorado, and as he says, I came along, and I said, Dad, I think you had something to do with it. But so here he was, and his wife was pregnant, he needed to get a real job, so he went looking for a real job, and at the Pep Boys he wasn't peppy enough at the auto store, so they were looking for young men to get elementary school positions in teaching. So that's how he got the teaching position. But he had no art experience. You might have heard all this story before, but...
Well, a little bit. He started painting because he had to teach art classes, right?
Well, he had to teach art classes because the principal of the school said, Karl, you need to give him 43 minutes of art a week or day. I forget which it was then. And so he got some supplies and he started looking at these kids. And he knew how to teach writing because that was his big interest. You just had everybody be quiet and maybe you played some music and then you were encouraging. And so he thought, well, okay, we'll do painting the same way. And he was so fascinated. You saw some of those pictures.
Of the students'
of the
early
student work. It's like, wow, none of these kids have magazines coming into their house. They weren't seeing Jackson Pollock on Life magazine or anything. Yeah. How do they know how to do this, And so he thought, that looks interesting. If they can do it, maybe I can do it. And they got himself some paints, and that was what started him. Wow. But they came to Claremont because he wanted to get into graduate school. He'd been doing some painting. So they lived over across from Harper Hall.
In Harper, okay.
It used to be little bungalowy things, and then now it's a big computer building. So they're my first memories. That's where that little picture of me and Karl and Isa came from.
Right.
And apparently 5 minutes after the newspaper took that picture, I tipped over the easel and red paint went everywhere. But yeah, that was why they came. And then I guess they decided, why not stay here? And that was when he got the dad to help him with building the house.
With building the house, nice. And so while he was teaching, did he go to CGU, or he went to CGU and then started teaching?
No, he started teaching first, and then while he was teaching, he was going to school, and it was CGS then.
CGS.
And it was basically at Scripps around the Seal Pond there.
Okay.
That's where all the little studios. There's a coffee shop now and a mail room and all that stuff. But that was where all the studios were. And at some point, he said to Gene Ames, who sort of taught design classes for everyone who was an art major, he said, "I got to drop out of school. I'm teaching. I got to keep up the yard. I got kids. I can't do this school thing." And she said, "Well, Karl, I'll come over on Wednesday nights and see what you're painting, because it's really close here, and I know you're going to be painting. So don't drop out." And so that was incredibly generous of her.
That's amazing.
And so he kept painting over there, and then when they came here, his studio was in that back room there.
It was in the back room of the house.
Where the carport backs up against. They didn't have a garage. They had that, and then his grandmother died in 63, or must have been 62, and gave him some money, and that's what Fred helped him design this.
This studio was built then, at that time, in 62, 63. So the yard was different then.
It was when we first moved in, of course, it was scraped lemon grove, probably.
Okay.
And in fact, see that camphor tree, that great big camphor tree there with the bells hanging from it? That was a gift from Florence Arnold.
Elsie Arnold.
And it was a teeny little stick, and this was flat and dry. And Karl had been a gardener a lot. He did that for money when he was a student. And so he loved that stuff, and he loved gardens and gardening.
Did you spend a lot of time working with your dad in the studio?
Yes, Chrissy and I, we were really always here. When I come out here and I sit in this chair, I think about him. He liked dinner at 6.
6 o'clock, okay.
It's kind of like some of these paintings, you know. He liked the routine, and I did a lot of cooking early because my mom also worked, and I can just imagine him looking in there going, "Oh, wonder what they're making for dinner."
Really? Yeah.
It's really kind of nostalgic.
That's so sweet to have these views from the studio to the house.
Yeah.
And see it all. Would you also draw and paint as well, or were you mostly doing things for him?
We all did, and sometimes he would say, "Okay," he'd sort of give an assignment. We always thought that was really fun.
Oh, nice.
Give us an assignment.
And so, I think you told me a story one time. It was a great story about picking colors for him, or helping him choose colors.
That was my sister.
Chrissy did a lot of helping him decide certain places and colors that would kind of complete a.
It was more like in order to make them random.
Oh.
It was kind of the opposite of what you just said there.
See, okay.
Because some of them were very, very figured out. I mean, I love to sit and look at some of these, and I'll go, "Okay, here's yellow, orange, blue. So, okay, that was a quadrant that was folded over this way, and then, because there's that again."
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're all really figure-outable, but you can spend a lot of minutes staring at that, trying to figure it out. But then he wanted to have some that were completely random.
Yeah.
And so Chrissy, he had sort of like a game show, you know. He would number the colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many, and she would pull them out, and there were some rules like no two greens together, this and that. And so she would just help. I don't remember ever getting to do anything like that.
Yeah, was it?
I was probably busy. There's no greens together in that one.
Yeah, so the jars of paint would all have numbers on them?
There were little cardboard tags.
Little cardboard tags, and so you tag
like a raffle.
So she'd know to pull the different ones out. And,
she'd just pull them out and see what it was. Okay, 1, 6, 9, 1, 7, and then start the next row.
Right. You make you clean his brushes or anything like that?
No.
He was always good about that, wasn't he?
Never would have probably let anyone clean the brushes.
Yeah, that'd be just right, I bet.
He did have a lot of people make stretcher bars for him.
Oh, sure.
Lots of students, and my high school boyfriend from junior year, who was around in Claremont a lot longer than I was, did a lot of stretcher bars. And there's a work table outside, and he'd stretch them and stretch the canvas on.
So you said that Florence Arnold gifted the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other artists that would come visit him in the studio that you remember?
The people who I remember were not so much fellow artists. I mean, they sort of often, you know, Mackintosh, Maloof, Fred Hammersley was a super good friend, for sure.
Yeah, Fred would come to the house.
And then sort of the younger set of people who had been students, had a student relationship, who got to be really close friends. Chris Tuvey, Denny Farber, Dennis Garcia, Steve Kamba. And David Pagel too was a good friend. And the Wilsons, Patrick Wilson and Richard were good friends.
Yeah.
And then his really closest friends were not artists. There were sort of four people who I think he met who were more politics friends. After he was not a pacifist really during the war. I mean, he joined the war early. He was really excited. His mom said he could enlist. Mom and Dad said he could enlist, but this was just out of high school. And then once if it would go into the officer training, because they figured that might be a little safer.
I see.
And then as soon as he'd get in, they got an offer like, okay, 6 weeks of this and you can fly a fighter plane. And of course the parents aren't in charge of him anymore. You know, he belongs to the Navy. And so, but then he's at college and afterwards he sort of met some people who had been conscientious objectors and stuff, and his politics got pretty lefter. You know, he did not like to talk about the war. I remember once asking him, he said, read Catch-22. You know, that's all you need to
Okay.
know. It's been a long time since I read Catch-22.
Joseph Heller.
Yeah.
Will guide you through Karl's opinions of
Kind of.
bureaucracy in the war.
Right.
Yeah. Was it Fred Hammersley that got your dad to start teaching at Pomona? What was that?
I think
that was 79.
Fred
right?
was long gone by then. He was in New Mexico. Albuquerque.
Yeah.
I don't remember how he got to. I think my mom was making enough money and he was selling paintings enough that he figured he could stop teaching in the elementary school in Chino. And he was super popular with the kids and a lot with the other teachers too. Never so much with principals. I mean, I always had a sort of a feeling of, you know, real conservative principals being confronted with Karl being Karl, and he did a really good job. What could they say? But he was a little out there for them, maybe. And at some point, when they were sort of getting really restricted, like he was being told not to use too much paper in his classroom, and he wrote this letter and quit. He probably finished the year. I don't know, maybe not. But it was also in a context of he knew that financially it would be possible. My mom was, I heard, annoyed because if he'd gone 2 more years, his retirement would have been better.
Right.
But he had just had enough.
That was it.
And so he spent 2 years basically just getting to paint. And that was fantastic. Somehow after a couple of years they approached him, partly because he lived in Claremont, he had a studio here, that felt better than hiring somebody who was hightailing it off to LA as soon as class was out.
Right. So.
And he really did there was a lot of people who came to visit, and he was a presence that many people were close to.
Yeah.
That was part of my keeping this house, was because it means a lot to a lot of people other than just our family.
Right.
It was a place where they came and loved and had good times.
You moved into this house in 1955, and you're growing up here, and then your dad had, you know, one of the bigger shows of his career in 1959 for abstract classicists with John McLaughlin and Frederick Hammersley and Norster Feidelson. And Jules Langsner curated your dad into that show. Do you have any memories of the excitement around that time? Was your dad traveling a lot?
No, and probably he wouldn't, because he was still teaching.
He was still teaching.
He was still
so
on a Monday through Friday schedule. You know, I remember more going to galleries. Like there was a couple of big shows out of Pasadena, and there was one that he won a prize of, and then Claremont City bought the painting. I mean, it was he was in the papers.
Yeah, he was in the papers. And
stuff like that happened. And they would come up from Redlands to Claremont because the Scripps Fine Arts Foundation would have speakers and show movies, and it was like a cultural thing to come up here.
To come visit.
I don't think the University of Riverside was there yet.
Was there even? Wow.
So Claremont was a big deal. Stuff was going on more here than other places.
Very exciting time.
Yeah, and like I say, I remember sort of knowing that my dad was a famous artist in those 58, 59 days, but I don't remember sort of it bubbling over into anything happening here.
Yeah.
My dad really liked the desert. It was I can remember often, meaning like twice a year, go down to Joshua Tree. You know that drive that goes through, there's a place where you go from one end of the park and you come out on another highway. It's a bunch of miles all through the park. And
29 Palms through to...
That's on that side, down to Cottonwood.
It's Cottonwood.
But they built that road through there so you don't see much.
Right.
You don't see the road much. And he just loved those colors and those shapes and that cactusy stuff. Probably coming from the Midwest, that was a
big change.
Yeah, but pretty much, you know, when he was here, or he was in the living room.
Was he listening to any particular music in this studio?
Much jazz.
A lot of jazz and
much Miles Davis era jazz, and classical also. He came from a very classical music family.
Oh, okay.
His mother's father came from the Tyrol in Austria to Chicago to play the cello with the orchestra. And I might be getting this wrong, but yeah, he did play the cello, and so my grandma played the piano. They were expecting her to continue on with that. So it was like music as an art form, they were very appreciative of. Art, didn't know from art so much. I mean, I'm sure they know what you would know as an educated person.
For sure,
but it wasn't a thing. I mean, it was kind of shocking.
Your dad got here. So your dad would spend a lot of time with a few people around the art community in Claremont. Sam Maloof being one of those. I know Harrison McIntosh being another. Was there a particular meeting spot that they would go?
There was a sort of a classy. The guys had lunch at Walter's Cafe, which is downtown Claremont. Downtown Claremont, which was very dull then.
Yeah.
Not too much happened in those days compared to later. There was a really nice little Clark's art store on Harvard there, and he bought a lot of paints.
That was
there.
And
he was very specific, real specific about getting good quality paint.
And you remember some of those, you remember some of those conversations and talking to the...
Yeah, and I also remember later being around, there's a couple colors that didn't age as well as others that kind of crackled. There was a Mars green and a green and a black, I think.
The black,
they lost that beautiful, smooth, vertical grain. But that's where you buy those, and there's another whole group of artists that used to lunch together up at the Thai restaurant. Thai Orchid. She still remembers him. We sometimes will go up there, but Russ and I, and say hi, and it's the same lady, and I'll say, hi, remember my dad? And she'll say, of course.
That's really great.
Yeah. You know, that little restaurant, when they opened that restaurant, they sent McLeod, who did a lot of the inside of this house, and they sent him to Thailand to see what the decor should be in their restaurant.
Oh, really?
And then he came back.
Thai Orchid send him over there to do that.
And he built that restaurant in appropriate style.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that's neat. So those guys would all go there for sure. There was Sam Breyer's book and art store downtown Claremont. My dad hung out a lot in the book and art store.
So it was a bookstore and an art supply store, or they would sell art books there?
Art books.
Yeah.
And
so a lot of the books in your dad's book collection would come from...
Very possibly. Were you going to ask something?
What was he collecting? Art also?
My dad or Sam?
Your dad.
He was very interested at a period of time in African art. I mean, a lot of those guys were interested in African art. And I think that there was a gallery. I have some pieces that have got the provenance written down on them. And there was a particular gallery in LA that maybe he did some trading with.
So he traded some of his pieces for some African art pieces.
Maybe, or maybe he just had enough money then that was
was-
not a problem.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those guys like the African shapes and the Japanese, although Japanese was kind of earlier, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Certainly,
Yes.
certainly, if your dad knew John McLaughlin, you know,
Yeah.
well, there would be a lot of
Yeah.
connection with John and some of those
but I don't remember, you know,
artworks.
you'll notice in this house there's no paintings but his, really.
Yeah,
Except
it's all
except things
his.
that I've put up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, my tchotchkes.
He's very active in his work, and I think
He did the wall space,
he
you
did
know.
the wall space, so, you know.
I remember after he stopped painting, after I had come down here, I remember saying, doesn't it upset you that you're not painting anymore? Because he actually stopped when he was 70,
Mm-hmm.
which is so interesting to think about for me. He stopped driving and he stopped painting at 70. He taught longer, but I'm almost 75, and when I think about stopping that thing that was so important to him, interesting, but was more physical than anything else. But at that time when I asked him, he said, well, you know, I get to look at my own paintings in a different way now, because before I only was interested in the ones going forward. What I was doing now, he said, it was sort of like looking at an old girlfriend when you were happily married. Why would you? You know, all the interest was right in front of your nose. So I thought that was neat. Although I do think towards the end, you know, you tend to have sad thoughts about what you might have done better. He always said it was superbly set for old age.
When did you move back to Claremont?
So that was 2010. Then it was real obvious that my folks could use some help down
Could use some help, and so yeah.
Because my dad was getting more frail and my mom was getting it was not so easy, and it needed somebody to liven it up. And it worked out, it was a perfectly good time for me to come down.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, 2010, December of 2010 I moved down. And he died in summer of 2012.
Yeah.
And then I thought, when I was coming down, that then I would move back up.
Back up,
North.
sure.
And then it just seemed like my mom had gotten pretty used to having me around.
So you wanted you there.
So that worked out fine. By that time I'd gotten involved in a lot of different things down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not really ready to give this house up.
Yeah, and it's been such an amazing thing for you to preserve, you know, both.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate all the resources you put into preserving this beautiful
Thank you.
house and studio, and thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.